Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great, thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. Today we're going to talk about slave play. More than a few people have asked me why I decided to go see Jeremy O. Harris's Slave Play on Broadway. And for me, the answer is pretty simple. I wanted to see it so that I could have a real, thoughtful opinion on it. It's my job as a cultural critic to engage with artwork so that I can critique it. And sometimes those critiques are positive and sometimes they're drags, okay? But in order to go either way, I actually have to sit with the art. So I get it. If you saw images from this show, if you read reviews about it and you're like, I'm not spending my money on that, I get it. But I do think that there's a really good chance, because this is the hottest ticket on Broadway right now, that there's a good chance that this show could be a major moment in contemporary American theater, and I want to have it in my frame of reference. Slave Play has already gotten tons of rave reviews from theater critics. Now, I will say theater critics are primarily white, but I have also seen Black theater critics whom I respect and admire and trust say really positive things about this show. So I didn't know what to expect. But what I do know is I'm not down with saying a thing just should not exist because of a viral, decontextualized image. You can save your money, do whatever you want with your money, okay? But saying that it should not be on Broadway or petitioning to have it taken down when you haven't engaged with a second of the show, I just don't agree with. Now, it would be different if Jeremy O. Harris had been accused of violence, harm, sexual assault, anything like that. Then I'd be like, cancel it. But absent that, I think it's okay for things that maybe make us uncomfortable to exist. And you know what's really interesting is most of the people who are protesting the show or boycotting the show probably agree with a number of the underlying messages of the show, even if you don't agree with how Harris got there. And I'll say that this show is humorous, though not as funny as it thinks it is. And that humor cannot be adequately captured in an image. If you think that slavery is a foundational institution of the United States and that it impacts the lives and interactions of every Black and white American in every context, then you agree with Harris. Obviously, this review is going to be full of spoilers. I just assume y'all are not going to see it. I paid more than $200 for my ticket, which is a lot of freaking money, and my seats were not even close to being the best. They do have affordable seating, but I don't want to be sitting in the back of the house. It's just, that's not the theater experience that I enjoy the most. Live theater is for rich people. Just to get a few technical notes out of the way, I love that there are so many people of color behind the scenes of this show. That is so rare. The set designer, the costume designer, the dramaturg, the playwright, obviously, the director. I really appreciate that. I loved the set of this show. It was a two-storied, like, mirrored wall. And I assume that it was mirrored so that the audience is forced to reckon with our reactions to Jeremy O. Harris's provocations. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And then above that mirrored wall were the words, "Nobody touch me, you know, righteous," from Rihanna's work. Now, I had questions about why Harris would choose a Rihanna song, because Rihanna, I mean, this show is very Black American, very much so. It's set on a Virginia plantation. And Rihanna is obviously not American. I thought maybe there's a better fit somewhere. And so I did research and I tried to find like an explanation. Certainly there's an explanation. All I could really find was that Harris really likes Rihanna and really likes the song Work. I'm sure there's something else. It's just not out there. I also really loved the lighting and sound design. Those things really make a production. All right, let's get to it. This show is about three couples, a Black woman and a white man named Kanisha and Jim, a white woman and a biracial man named Alana and Philip, and a Black gay man and a white gay man named Gary and Dustin. They're all engaging in slave sexual fantasies on a Virginia plantation called the McGregor Plantation. So this is it's role play. They're engaged in these sexual fantasies with slavery as the backdrop as a form of therapy. These couples are trying to come back together and experience sexual connection. And as I am discussing it sounds so crazy, and it is crazy. It sounds crazy because it is crazy, but there's more. This is the part of the show that would offend you if you were going to be offended, because it's not immediately clear for us, the audience, that this is fantasy, that this is role play, a form of therapy to fix their relationship. All we see is initially a black woman twerking on the ground to Rihanna, lusting after her white overseer, right? It's easy for your head to go all kinds of places. And Kanisha's on the ground twerking to Rihanna, and she's using the butterfly McQueen voice from Gone with the Wind, you know, the silly slave voice. It's rough. But we do get hints as the scene progresses that this is role play. It's not real. You know, they're tripping over their lines. They look a little bit awkward. They look uncomfortable. Sometimes they break character. But yes, that first vignette sees Kanisha begging her white overseer named Jim for sex. She is begging him to call her a nasty negress. It's BDSM with enslavement as the backdrop. I wasn't offended. I had read enough to know where we were going, but it definitely was different. And even in that first vignette, we do begin to see the messaging of the show. Kanisha is much more comfortable in this performance than Jim is. She wants to call him Massa Jim. He wants her to call him Mr. Jim because he is not like the white folks in the big house. Jim wants to let us know that he's a different kind of white man. And that's an important part. The next vignette had Alana, the white woman, and Philip, the biracial man. She is the mistress of the McGregor plantation, and she wants to sleep with the mulatto. And he is playing the violin, and he starts out playing Beethoven. There was some good humor here. I did laugh. He starts out playing Beethoven, and Alana says, "No, play the music that makes the negresses hoot and holler." It sounds so bad, you guys. It does sound bad. And then he starts playing Pony. And I laugh because I'm black and I know what Pony is. 3/4 of that damn audience didn't know what song he was playing. There are a couple of references in this vignette to black people being more connected to our base sexual desires. That's an old racist trope. I assume Harris inserted that in there on purpose. And then we get to the most shocking moment of this vignette where Alana disappears for a second. She returns. She's holding a big black sex toy, a dildo, and she has plans to penetrate Philip with it. And Alana says very proudly that this sex toy has been passed down from her mother and her mother's mother. There are a few ways to interpret that. I mean, the idea that white women have a fantasy in their mind of the hypersexualized big black buck. And then in the scene, Alana penetrates Philip with the sex toy. This is, of course, all simulated. I was still trying to piece it together at this point. I was trying to figure it out. But for me, it was clear that this was supposed to be intentionally humorous. The two gay men, Gary and Philip, play an enslaved man who has some kind of authority over a white indentured servant. And the white indentured servant makes Gary come to climax by licking his boots. Now, if you haven't caught on, there was more simulated sex in this show than I truly thought was possible. I've been to many plays in my life. I've been to all kinds of theater. I've never seen anything like this, and different kinds of simulated sex. I mean, there's even full frontal nudity, which is not unheard of in theater, but it's a lot. It's a whole lot. And I certainly think that that contributes to the controversy that's been swirling around this show. Now, as bizarre as it was, I wasn't really offended or angry about the first act. I think sex itself is a performance. We even use those words. And in that performance, we are always having to navigate all of these power dynamics. Gender, race, your sexual position, your sexuality. Jeremy O. Harris just made that more concrete, more literal. And roleplay is a pretty common kink wherein people choose to act out these different power relations. So here, Harris is using slavery, as distasteful as you might find that. He's using slavery as a way to explore the stuff that's already there. And that's not so far off to me. The first act ends suddenly when Jim, basically mid-stroke, says he can't do it anymore. He yells out the safe word, and we're all immediately taken out of the fantasy scenario. The big reveal is this is all just a performance. It is therapy. All three couples are engaging in antebellum sexual performance therapy, and they all come together and sit down with a therapist who created the therapy and debrief on what just happened and what their experiences were. It's really clear here that Harris is trying to send up jargony therapy speak or the faux academic language that's so popular on Tumblr, the language everybody accuses me of using. And he does it to sometimes humorous effect here. The white partners of Kanisha, Philip, and Gary are very much I don't see race kind of white people. And the black partners do find that to be very traumatizing. So they're trying to use this sexual fantasy in order to get a better understanding of like how to reconcile their race with their sexual desires. During the act of slave play, the white partners have to engage in the racial dynamics. They can't avoid it. It's awkward for them, and it's also awkward for us, the audience. This middle section is by far the worst part of the show. It's too long. The characters are overdrawn, particularly the two therapists. They're two women, and they too are engaged in an interracial relationship, but they're just they're cartoonish. They seemed like a bad SNL skit to me. All of the black characters during this section of the show have monologues of, I'm black, why don't you see my blackness kind of monologues. And sometimes they're good, but sometimes they feel like high school monologue competitions. Real cliche, just stuff that you could honestly find on Tumblr. Gary, who is the black gay man, realizes that he's the prize and he deserves to be treated with dignity, and Dustin, his partner, is not doing that. Philip, who is biracial, realized that despite the fact that he feels like he is above race, his epiphany is, oh no, I'm not above race. You have always seen me as the big black sexual buck. Kanisha finally finds her voice in confronting Jim, who is a stereotypical white man in this show, and does very, stereotypical things of trying to control the narrative and over talking everybody and demanding that he's right. By the end of this middle section, Kanisha, she ends it in a really, in a strong way. Again, I didn't love that monologue, but she definitely was the center. I just felt like, I don't know, just be more imaginative. There were just things that were really obvious to me, like Alana playing the clueless white feminist woman. And there's even lines in the show where it's pointed out, that's what I would expect a white woman to say. And it's like, yeah, but why you gotta say that? But again, I'm a black woman who is deeply in tune with all of these discourses. And so all the middle-aged white people who are reviewing this show and loving up on this show, it's probably news to them. By the end of the second act, the black characters do figure themselves out. They are able to reclaim their voices and their power. It just felt a little bit too tidy to me. Everybody simultaneously has these huge racial epiphanies, and quite a bit of the stuff that was supposed to be funny in that second act just to me felt awkward. But I do agree with the underlying ideas here. White people do not want to have to confront their whiteness. But one thing I really did like about this section was we spent the bulk of the time with the black characters giving voice to their traumas, working through their pain, with very little attention paid to the white feelings. The third act of this show is by far the best. It finds us back in Jim and Kanisha's bedroom, and they're the most interesting to me anyway, so I'm glad that we ended with them. But they're debriefing, they're working through what just happened. Kanisha has found her voice in this very not groundbreaking monologue at the end of the second act of this show. And she's trying to process all of her emotions. The character of Kanisha is basically monologuing here. She's trying to work through how whiteness and blackness are forced to commingle in American society. There's this Hegelian construction. Whiteness needs blackness to exist. Whiteness cannot exist without the exploitation and the dismissal of blackness. She needs validation, a recognition from Jim that her feelings are valid, and her needs continue to be unmet. The reckonings make him uncomfortable. He's not trying to do it. But finally, the wall comes down and Jim gives Kanisha what she needs, which is a reenactment of the enslaved sex fantasy in their home. I'll be honest, it is jarring. That was the most uncomfortable that I ever was during this show. He goes into full-on overseer mode with the voice and everything. We get more graphic simulated sex. There's full frontal nudity. It's a lot. But again, as discomforting as it is, this is consensual sex. This is what Kanisha desires. I have no problem saying over and over and over again that the actress who plays Kanisha is brilliant, absolutely gorgeous. Her name is Joaquina Kalukango. I want to say it over and over again. Hopefully she gets more roles. This was her Broadway debut, and I don't fault her at all for taking this part. It's not often that we see such meaty parts for Black women. She did a great job with it, and we do end this show with Kanisha's words. After the show ended, I just sat there and thought to myself, what the fuck just happened? I looked around and most of the people around me were like, what the fuck just happened? It is certainly provocative. It's certainly controversial. Sex is controversial. Race is provocative. I mean, you know, it's a powder keg. It's 2 hours long with no intermission. That is a very long time to sit through racial trauma. After it was over, I definitely felt disoriented, but I wasn't disgusted. And I do feel like that was Harris's aim. That being said, a provocative show is not necessarily a great show. I did not leave that theater thinking, whoa, that was a masterpiece. I left the theater thinking, oh, okay, there are lots of interesting conversations to be had about that. And I left the theater thinking, I'd probably feel differently about this show if I had a white parent or a white partner. That show definitely appeals to the Loving versus Virginia demographic, and I just can't relate. In order to prepare for this video, I read a ton of reviews, and most of them address white discomfort, but very few of them, almost none, address Black discomfort. And that's really telling to me. This show, like everything else on Broadway, is not really for Black audiences. I mean, we're just not the people who buy the tickets. And the Black people that it does speak to, it's a very distinct subsection of Black folks. I completely see why a Black viewer of this show would be uncomfortable, even if I wasn't, because of the way so much of the racial stuff was framed. A lot of the stuff that this show contains are not really revelations for Black people. We understand whiteness. We have to be familiar with it in order to survive. Like, that's just a coping mechanism that most of us learn from a very young age. There is a difference between accepting the reality of the racial dynamic of this country and making do, and being the kind of Black person who deeply desires love, acceptance, validation from white people. This show is about Black people deeply desiring closeness to white people, subjecting themselves to all manner of trauma in order to regain that connection. I understand that many of the reviewers and many of the people who love this show see Jeremy O. Harris, a queer Black man, forcing white folks to say, this is who you are. Look at you. Look at what you've done. Look at what whiteness is. And in some ways that is very courageous. But I see 3 Black people begging their white partners to see them, and I don't approve of it. And as a viewer, as an audience member, I'm just sitting there like, why beg? Whiteness is disgusting. You're repulsed by it. I get it. Kanisha even says you're a virus. Okay, but then why go out of your way to catch it? I guess I couldn't get all the way there because we've established that whiteness is so dangerous and so damaging, that whiteness is like a smallpox infested blanket. But I'm sitting there like, then why you gonna lay up with the blanket? I mean, really, what is the point of calling out white supremacy if you're just gonna lay prostrate before it? Now, that's me bringing my stuff to this show. That's my political orientation. I completely admit it. And I've said before, I'm not against interracial anything. I just don't personally grapple with a deep yearning, a burning desire to be near whiteness, to access it in that way. Now, I'm also open to the idea that slave play isn't necessarily just about sex, that it is also about the forced intimacy between Blackness and whiteness that living in a country built on indigenous murder and chattel slavery requires, and that Harris just uses sex to make that point. But if you take a look at a few pieces of Harris's work, there definitely seems to be a theme, and that theme is a longing, a lust for white men. People have pointed out that he wrote an essay, I think for Vice, about his desire for white men. His other play, Daddy, features a younger Black man in an intimate relationship with an older white man. And then we get slave play. Is there anything wrong with that? No, not necessarily. I mean, it's not unusual for artists to have a niche that they want to explore. I'm just saying that some of the feelings that I felt sitting in the theater are backed up by Harris's own background. I do feel compelled to say, though, that some of the criticism that this show has gotten from people who will never see the show and who don't want to see the show is unfair. A lot of folks are just uncomfortable with conversations about slavery and sexuality. They just don't like it. But not just that. There's something else. Rape was the most common form of sexual encounter between white and black people during enslavement. I don't think anybody is going to question that. However, other kinds of sexual relationships existed. And Annette Gordon-Reed, who is the foremost scholar on Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson, has been for decades trying to give some nuance to this conversation, not just about Sally Hemings, but women who are related to Sally Hemings and their relationships to white men. And Beyonce tried to bring this up in that Vogue article she wrote when she was reflecting on her family background and history and her new kids. And she brought up the fact that she had to reckon with finding out that one of her enslaved ancestors fell in love with a white slave owner. People did not want to hear it. And I understand why people don't want to hear it. History is not black and white. And I do think it's possible to acknowledge rape, exploitation, coercion with the limited agency that some enslaved people were able to exert over their sexual lives and experiences. And maybe that might have involved some interracial desire. And that's hard and it's uncomfortable and we don't want it, but according to the documents that we have, the research and scholarship that we have, it happened. I just don't have a desire to strip enslaved people of that tiny amount of limited agency that they did fight to exert in their lives. That doesn't fit into a neat binary. It's not clean. But moving on. I'm definitely fascinated by the kind of incredulous responses that we see from Harris because of the controversy, because of the outrage that this show has birthed. And I'm just like, you know what you were doing. You know what you did, okay? There is no way that this show was not architected to be controversial. It was architected to be provocative. So when you get people circulating petitions to take your show down or to boycott your show, that was a choice. It was a choice. This show does feel engineered to evoke strong reactions, so own it. A lot of people love this show. I don't assume that I'm right and they're wrong. I say that they saw something that I just didn't see. This show will certainly win lots of awards. Harris will probably be nominated for a Pulitzer. It'll probably be nominated, if not win, a Tony Award. Just wasn't my bag. But I think that maybe we do need to reconsider what makes something provocative, what makes something controversial, particularly with white audiences. Now, I don't think that white people have to hate you for you to be doing your job of racial truth-telling effectively. I just think that if a whole lot of white folks love your hard truths about race, then you have to think about what is it that they love. There's some messaging in this show that is very white liberal friendly. Who knows what's gonna happen with Jeremy Harris in the future? I mean, he might be the new Kara Walker. Kara Walker, the famed visual artist, when she first came out, a lot of black thinkers and artists and activists despised her work, but now she's revered. In conclusion, I don't regret seeing it. I wouldn't try to dissuade anyone else from seeing it. I would not spend a single penny more of my own money to see it, but I might go again for free. That's all I have to say about that, you guys. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Shout out to all the patrons. Patreon is where I upload all of the bonus content. There's videos, there's podcasts, there's reading lists. I appreciate every single patron. Thank you guys so much. People have asked me to answer their questions about YouTube, about blogging, about feminism, and I have opened up office hours. You can sign up for office hours on my website, KimberlyNFoster.com. That is open. That is technically consulting, and I do charge a fee. But if you'd like my one-on-one time to review your project or answer your questions about anything, you can sign up there. I'm only doing 5 hours of that a week. That's it. I don't want to spend my time consulting. I don't want to do that. I want to make stuff. But I wanted to give people who might be interested an opportunity to connect. Sign up for the email newsletter. That will be launched as soon as I find something that I want to publish, to be honest. So I'm still looking. I'm still accepting submissions. Send me things. I want to see. I want to read. You can send me full essays or pitches. Grab some merch. This is a merch shirt. This is my face. my little light brown face on here. It's a little lighter brown than I am, but you know. And it says, I'm great, thank you so much for asking. You don't have to buy anything from me. You don't have to financially support me in any way. Watching the videos, that's more than enough. I appreciate it. Leave a comment, send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram or Twitter. I think that's it. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.